Hello everybody, and welcome to the Environmental Awareness Show. I thought I would begin by carrying on with what I have been reading recently on the show for the last several weeks. That was in regards to 5G and its impact on humanity and obviously the environment. And since this is the Environmental Awareness Show, then that would be something that would be worth reporting, as of course, as I said, the 5G does impact the environment adversely. And so where I got to in that report was it was breaking down on the last several weeks 5G and its effects, and then it was moving into the idea of 5G, which is to ultimately bring humanity into a more virtual or augmented reality. And that was the point where I left off, and that is the point where I will continue. The formation of the global electronic brain. But if 5G promises to radically alter the experiential world we inhabit in these days, there is something further that we must understand if we are to grasp what is really being prepared. At the same time as increasingly sophisticated technologies increasingly disconnect human beings from the natural world, a network of electronic intelligence, global in extent, gradually emerged. At first, it was under close human supervision, but it has steadily grown more autonomous. Consider the difference between radio broadcasting and the internet. The former is under tight human control and serves a very specific purpose, whereas the latter has established itself as a permanent, constantly available electronic infrastructure of undefined scope and reach. What has been happening over recent decades is the increasing coordination of intelligence-endowed machines, so that they operate without need of human supervision. The efforts now underway to create a 5G electronic ecosystem are the necessary precondition for developing and perfecting a global artificial intelligence network, which feeds on the very fast transfer of large amounts of information. This global electronic brain, innocuously called the Internet of Things, is already impacting on our lives. Through the Internet of Things, more and more things will be linked to the Internet and made smart by being given the ability to function autonomously. On smart motorways, your car will drive itself, while you, wearing your virtual reality headset and haptic vest, play interactive computer games in the back seat. And in your smart house, your fridge will autonomously order more eggs, milk and cheese for you via a wireless connection with a supplier. But the reality is that the Internet of Things is itself the precursor to what has been called the Internet of Thinking, in which human beings will find themselves having to live in a relationship to the vast global electronic intelligence. It will be active everywhere in our environment, and we shall be obliged to interact with it in order to accomplish the simplest of tasks. In the Internet of Thinking, it is not hard to see the progression into an electronically supercharged totalitarian state, with unprecedented control over the minutiae of individuals' lives. The possibility of this happening will only be increased by the thousands of new mini phone masts and satellites irradiating every inch of the planet with millimeter waves. For this is what 5G means. It means putting in place not just an improved telecommunications system, but rather a new system of systems, the infrastructure of electronic totalitarianism. As our world is increasingly smothered by a fog of radio waves, microwaves, and millimeter waves, it may seem that the gods of the underworld have taken hold of humanity in an ever-tightening grip, drawing us towards the false lights, the illusory lights of the hell beings and hungry ghosts that the Tibetan Book of the Dead long ago warned against. The electromagnetic energies that we have summoned and which promised to give us new powers now appear to be overpowering us, carrying us down into an underworld realm of hellish entertainment and distraction, of illusion and disconnection from the reality that really matters, the reality of nature, and the awareness that infuses nature, the reality of fellow creatures with whom we share our world, living in soil and sky and walking the earth beside us. We must ask, does the earth need an electronic ecosystem? Is it going to benefit in any way from being irradiated with millimeter waves? Is there actually any need at all for 5G? Can we even remotely conceive that 5G is the answer to any of the pressing ecological and social problems that face us today? We stand at a dreadful threshold, and yet surrender to despair cannot be the right response. What can we do? First of all, we can be made aware of it, and then share what we have discovered. There are campaigns against 5G to join. There are petitions to sign, letters to write, and legal actions to support. The best place to begin is the international appeal to stop 5G on Earth and in space, which has gathered tens of thousands of votes, including those of many health professionals, environmentalists, and other scientists. But primarily, what needs to be done is to share an informed understanding to the deeper significance of the global electronic brain, whose emergence 5G will hasten. To this end, we need to develop a clear perception of the moral quality of electricity. The better to recognize the kind of beings or dark force entities that it serves. This will empower us to break the spell that electricity and electronic technologies have over us, and it will enable us to form a more appropriate relationship to them. One of Rudolf Steiner's most helpful insights into electricity was his observation that it is light in a fallen, degraded state, light that has fallen beneath nature into the sub-natural realm, and that is why we must actively guard against an ever-increasing dependence on it, for it threatens to drag us down. And so, as we continue to agree with the 5G and the electromagnetic infrastructure, the curtain of electro-smog is drawn across our world.
As we've grown up with this stuff developing, this electronic technology and these things called computers, and it's pretty easy to see how fast now that they're capable of doing a lot of things that they didn't used to be able to do. And it is interesting how when they have control of things like atomic bombs on these machines, computers, that the machines don't care about physical life. I don't think that there's anything there that has any consideration about annihilating anything that would interfere with whatever it I guess is programmed to do or wants to do. I could see that they could just exist even though humans don't, in the physical stuff here. And all these waves in the air, and it's just, you wonder how much it really affects our physical bodies. We get old anyway, but it's like it must be so, I guess the word subtle or something, that we hardly notice the slow effects of the radiation or whatever it is that's hitting our physical bodies. Is all this. I was thinking about how they should, the new schools, the home schools should be teaching the children about what the real natural environment is. And it's not just what they see, the physical, but like Tesla, get to know those things that Tesla knew way back then, that there was probably a lot that wasn't being revealed about these powers or whatever you want to call them, that we have at our access if we know how to handle them. But I do see the electronics developing very fast. It's this 5G, they got these towers they've been working on all over, and how much it really affects anything else. I don't see the trees dying from them, or the animals. The bees still seem to be surviving somehow. Maybe it's farther away from the towers or something. But so if the home schools would be teaching things about this, what's really our environment, even though we can't see things, how it affects us, and is it something beneficial, or is it something that we don't want to have affecting us?
Okay, I have a comment related to this, that my experience with the and feeling about it is maybe not exactly the same, but it's enough of the same that it relates, because this attention of using the electronics and coordinating through it is more important to the real agenda of this continuing unnatural and codependent system, which is really the intent. And whether, let's say, people die or not is not really the issue, or that they're even being physically harmed or not, because in general, the factor is that it's the controlled attention that they're requiring, and the inability of those who may not want to be controlled or have their attention distracted or taken to is very important conditional situation. And I'm not so sure that the 5G, in terms of its, my friends or certain friends of mine are asserting that they're not at all concerned with 5G. And in fact, they don't think that it harms us directly. That in fact, the high tension lines in the electric system, those, yes, are harmful with the radiation very directly if we're living under or close by. And so that is a difference that they point out to me. However, I think that the real difference is not a difference at all, is that our attention is focused, or just obfuscated is the word I use, into the channels of which they're creating and continuing to support. And that includes all the old ideas and what nature is itself, and what our relations are, and our universal perspectives as well. All three of those things, our human, our physical, and our spiritual attentions being occupied. And so that is the main issue, is that it's an efficiency model that they're using and controlling, dominating quite clearly. And everyone also knows about it. And so the wall of that's up here with this, it makes almost everything that we do or say has a extremely limited scope of effect or contact. And they're well aware of that, because even if we do get lots of communications to the general or the specific people that we want to, there won't be anywhere near what I call a quantum leap of opportunistic activity, we'll say, to take care of it and to actually move people from the codependency to a true unity of awareness, shared elements. And I don't mean that means that we're supposed to be able to run the TV, because they're not running it without their control mechanism. And that is the real issue, is that we're not able to get to that. And even if we tried to with billions of dollars, they still wouldn't have the awareness to accept the idea of what we were presenting as a whole in terms of the unity. So That's the issue. I'm sorry I'm not coming up with anything that sounds positive or solutionary. Nonetheless, that's my comment on it. I appreciate that we have to continue, and maybe a quantum leap at some point can occur or will occur, because they're obviously it seems to me they're practically immobile in doing anything that's really truly progressive or good in the whole. Everything they're doing is really old hat, even if their electronics are improved. And that's just the truth about it, I think. I do have a new operating computer that's coming in. I call it the Amazonville, you know, Amazon America. Because I mean, literally, I literally think that Amazon owns America almost now completely. It's just incredible. Bezos might as well be president, because that's all it takes, really, is having the money. The rest of anything anybody does is negligible. But that's what I call it, Amazonville, whatever. Shit. I have this new system is one that I can do pretty much all the things that I would need to be done in coordinating and being on different phone applications and computer programming applications and coordinating everything. So that's way overdue, and I'm hoping to have it be effective. I don't really care whether it has 5G or not. I don't really think that would be a requirement necessarily to be able to do it, which is of interest, but I'm always interested to see how everybody wants everything so quickly, and you want to get things done so quickly instead of have it be done, let's say, correctly. And just because what everyone recognizes is this efficiency model or simplistic model. That's probably a better word. They want the simplest thing possible, where they don't have to actually think about it. And one of the consciousness evaluations is that the people I'm noticing, I asked a guy yesterday, he had a food cart, mobile food cart, and I stopped in and I said, "Do you take credit cards?" And he didn't answer me. He said, "I'm not open yet. I'm not here yet." And and so I said to him, "You didn't answer my question. Do you accept credit cards?" And he still didn't answer me. Nobody listens to you. I mean, hardly at all. They listen to what they expect to hear or what they're thinking they need to answer. It's almost like they don't have any ability to calculate. It's like the calculator has replaced actually figuring out how to do mathematics. So now everybody can do the calculation on the computer or the calculator. They don't even think about what it is they're calculating necessarily. They just say, okay, what day is this? And I mean, the calculation is, they're not able to do it in their head. My father was an accountant, and he taught me how to do math in my head and to do tricks with it. And, you know, have your own calculator upstairs. And it's just incredible. We were teachers, and none of the students want to do any of the math, actually know what they're doing. Just say, okay, here the computer will do square roots and so forth, okay, and trigonomic whatevers. And okay, so I don't have to know what a trigonomic function is. I got to know what it does, how I can use it, and in an efficient way only, not really to know what is the difference between the different functions. The same thing with handling nature. So people don't handle their trash, and they operate in the same old mode of throw everything out that they've eaten and is you know, the materials that it came in, and no concept of a relation there that would really mean anything about eliminating the waste, etc. And that, you know, in our natural environment, correct behavioral procedures. The same thing goes with our communications about the spiritual, you know, because, and with the spiritual groups, because they do not recognize that they're all really one and the same, and they always want you to coordinate based on the history or the group education and religion that they have and perspective they've been given, which means that you're immediately taking this actual realness and turning it into either a spiritual or a religious perspective that they can understand. Therefore, you know, like using the same words, which means that they're going to translate those words to their old perspective. And they won't be able to address the new perspective in the correct, or the true perspective in the correct present moment adequately or really. Wow. There's little or no effect, in other words, of, and so my experience, like with almost everything, is nobody's changing anything at all in their behaviors or their relations, or just small things. But to have the whole get it, you know, wow, this is a big project, so I understand what Duane and Val and you know, what we're presented, and the challenge of it, the realism of it, and it's not something that, like I relate this to this. We have a experience of intuitive, I'll call it, awareness, or real awareness, as opposed to doing calculation or evaluation mentally, and or prescribing something that is kind of a by rote principle of action that it can be repeated like a scientific experiment to get the same positive result that we're looking for. Yeah, that's a method, but unfortunately, it does have that. It's the same thing. Are we coordinated? Not really. And are they coordinated? Well, not really, even if they have an interest. And to get them to even get out of any of the ideas of the past, or their history, their conditioning, or their tap-lined perceptions. Wow. So at the same time, you know, I have a lot of fun with trying to present this in all kinds of different avenues, and at least that's the fun part. And it does get some of the people to go, wow, you've really blown my mind, but it may not have, or impressed them, but it may not have gotten them to go the next step. And I think there's actually a lot of people like that, actually, sitting there that know. And I'm going to describe this way. I had an intuitive sense of this quote that came to me that my friends who are EC people in Canada, and they said, I wonder if he is the one, he is becoming a Mahanta, the Mahanta or whatever leader of that. You know, he's the one who's, that was the thought I had. I don't want to put any of those words on it because that's not it. You know, it's not the reality, but the fact that that thought came through, I knew came from them because I sent them materials to read, and it was a real thought, you know, real intuitive. And I know that, and I get those all the time, these related, referenced thoughts. And another one I got, Val, was about you and another friend, a woman who I was told that, or got this thought that they're still Ekis. And I didn't, these thoughts I don't forget, I think about or keep going back to them. Why do I have that thought? What does it relate to what's coming or what's becoming? And that kind of thing, because it definitely had nothing to do with wanting to go and like become the head of the spiritual organization so that we can repeat everything that was, you know, go back to where it was, as an example, or something like that, you know, an echo, a mirror of. It's because that's a directive that has something to do with the whole picture. Same thing with workers with the natural environment. You know, there's so many out there who really would like to be working with the real nature and can't get it or with it for so many reasons, financial or personal, or opportunity isn't available really, without what I'm going to call wasted effort, because you can do a whole bunch of stuff that's never going to be succeeding. And I found that doesn't seem too sharp. But when the opportunity comes, we have the tools and the open awareness to make it go, to go with it. That's really important to hold and keep with that. And that's, you know, also, so when I talk with people, I can see they're not going to get on board, or they're not going to come along and then, or even come to a call or what have you, that somehow this intuitive level, that is open. It's there, it's being shared. And I think that in some ways, with Duane is doing that, and the writing and all these other efforts are doing that, even though it doesn't appear that is it is reaching that level of quantum leap, I call it, where all of a sudden everybody goes, okay, there really is a huge number of people, they're really there, and they want to you know, get on that's the solar research vessel, you know, get on board. So I'm describing my experience of this whole thing for a while now, and I appreciate you listening.
what Peter was saying about, people kind of comprehending things a little bit slower nowadays because of the many factors that we're exposed to radiation and all these things. And even what Kevin said in the beginning, in that we're going to have to interface with technology or interact with it in some way for simple tasks, things that are very simple. And that I see a lot of that nowadays. It's like people who do the simple tasks almost can't do it because they become, I don't want to use obedient, but they become reliant and dependent on technology to do simple tasks. So it's very interesting to see because it's very real. And I still try to tell people about, you shouldn't hold the phone to your face, like right up next to the face, type of thing. Just something to start them off, wake them up a little bit, because a lot of people still do that. And I'll even say it here. I recommend people go watch a video on YouTube. Look up xylitol crystals. I think it's Z. It's XYLITOL crystals reacting to EMF, because it does the same thing to our blood cells. It makes them, because xylitol crystals form in essentially following geometric principles, but when exposed to EMF, they become sporadic and ununiformed or whatever. So I recommend people look at that because that's a big deal, especially with all the satellites in the sky, So just something for people to look into.
Yeah, there's a lot of science both ways with this. The people that, well, there's the fact checkers, and if it was real science, then there's room for rebuttal, and they wouldn't have to say, well, this is science. Science says this. Well, if you're basically disagreeing with it and have a rebuttal, I mean, they don't even go there nowadays. People just like, well, this is the science. But science inherently says, that there's room for rebuttal or room for more investigation, but they don't see it that way because they've been indoctrinated, a certain way to look at science. So it's interesting. And well, I have a few things here too. I've been investigating primary water, as you know, so I'm going to read a little bit of the history of primary water just to end it off. And this is from Wikipedia, they deleted primary water in Wikipedia in 2016, but it was saved by some people. And this is part of what they write here about the history of it. Ancient rock drillers. Across the arid Middle East and Asia, there developed extensive systems of well drilling through rock and water channels, often for long distances underground. Gannat in Iran, Baluchistan in Afghanistan, Karez in Jordan, Kurdistan, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and northwest China. In Oman, there's different names for these channels. It is well documented that many of the source wells of these systems were dug through solid rock to reach water sources that would often rise under pressure and then be transported to lower elevations for use in villages and farms. And it doesn't say what kind of drills they had. Hammer and chisel or what? It doesn't say. We have air drills now. That's the best supposedly for going through rock without a lot of environmental damage. Many Hellenistic and Roman aqueduct systems appear to have been based on the same concepts. Once a Village system starts running, it never dries up, no matter how hot or dry the weather, because the massive aquifers in rocky layers, fed by rainwater,
constantly feed the foliage. Okay. The signboard does not explain how so many wells could produce such a continuous and thus renewable water source in a desert region. That the earliest civilizations understood earth-generated primary water. How to locate and develop it is quite evident to those who have studied such ancient systems in arid regions. Both the Crusaders and Saladin bull castles and fortresses at the top of mountains were where they excavated shafts great distances through rock to intersect high-quality flowing veins of water. In the next section here, religious concepts of groundwater. From the very first verse of the Hebrew Bible, the two waters, which is a dual form, are mentioned in 8 times in the first 10 verses of Genesis. The Quran similarly speaks of two waters, and it is he who has let free the two seas, one palatable and sweet, and the other salt and bitter. And he has set a barrier and a complete partillion between them, and further presages and concept of fractured rock aquifers. And indeed, there are stories out of which rivers gush forth, and indeed, there are of them which split asunder so that water flows from them. Both the Bible and the Quran recount the story of Moses striking stone with his staff to bring forth the 12 wells that would sustain the tribes of Israel. Jacob's well in Nablus and the well of Zamzam in Mecca have continuously produced high-quality water for millennia. So the sea is also sourced by primary water, the oceans. I've been communicating with some people here that are drillers and surveyors of primary water, asking them some more detailed questions how this all works, because it's very interesting to me how come it's salt, and I know there's a lot of minerals in the soil and the rock as it breaks down, and the water absorbs that. So there's a process here going on. So just trying to get it straight in my own mind and then share it to everybody here. Early theories of groundwater. Well, Thales taught that water was the source of all things. Anaxagoras, 500 to 428 BC, as discussed by Aristotle and later by Hippolytus in the late 2nd century, claimed that oceans were created from two sources, rivers flowing into the seas and water of the earth, open upon which even the rivers largely depended. Emphasis added. Again, there's primary water sources in the oceans, the mantle of the earth coming up through where the oceans are, creating this water. I'll stop there. There's more. I'll continue next week, but it's again, science it's there. It's just being hidden. Like, for example, this Wikipedia section on primary water being deleted. And as you may notice, that they're deleting a lot of things like that oppose their narrative. YouTube, unavailable, and stuff from David Icke, Mercola, Dr. Mercola, the Health Ranger. These are all slowly being deleted. Kevin's stuff. It's all part of their plan for misinformation and just to make it their narrative. Let's do the NUUU, and thank you all for being here. NUUU. Peter? Jeremy, Tim,
NUUU.
Kevin,
NUUU.